So I think I try to encourage women to really spend the time knowing what they want and then finding ways to ask for it, to really insist upon having a career conversation at least once a year. They show that women are 5 times more likely to not have a career conversation than their male colleagues.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, folks and people, to today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. My name is Anthony Taylor. I'll be your host today. And today I am joined by Ellen Snee. Ellen, how are you today?
I'm fabulous today.
Excellent. I'm excited to be able to chat. So Ellen is the author of Lead, How Women in Charge Claim Their Authority. She is a speaker and executive coach to senior level women. And I'm just so excited. You've got such a cool background, both corporate background, education background, consulting background, personal background, that I'm excited to hear what's keeping you busy these days. But why don't you fill in any blanks that I might have missed for our listeners today?
I think that the through line of all of that is my passionate commitment to advancing women. I started as a Catholic nun, went to academia, started my own consulting business for 15 years, and then ended up executive in a Silicon Valley tech company. And now I've written the book and am on the speaker circuit. So it's full circle all around women.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that. So I really like the idea of claiming their authority because, if we think about it, women and men have different personalities. They have different strengths. I think you hear more generally about the struggles or the challenges that women face in their roles as senior leaders. Maybe we can speak to that a little bit. What are the things that you see, common challenges that women face, and some practical takeaways on how they can take the step towards that? Because it's a journey. It's not like a set it and forget it. It's really a progression. So what are the things that you've seen in your journey?
Yeah, so I think I would start with a basic distinction I make between leadership and authority, because during this 18 years, I was a Catholic nun in an order that ran colleges and universities and high schools. I saw women of every size, shape, personality be extremely effective leaders. And when I went on to Harvard to study women's development and leadership, I found in the leadership courses, they were all stressing what we call soft skills today, listening and caring and compassion. And I thought, the women I know in leadership roles do that really, really well. So that led to the question, what is the challenge for women? And I began to think it's about holding the role of authority, where you have the power to hire, fire, write performance reviews, all those challenging things. And for women, especially, I think the role and the relationship becomes the challenge.
It's interesting that you say like the things that make women leaders. There's like a YouTube video of a joke of like women in the UN. If all world leaders were women, that they would just communicate and they would get so much more done because they weren't posturing. And it's in fact the thing. But then of course, everybody has the challenge. So as it comes to authority, what does authority look like to you in practice, whether that's from your shared experience or what you see with the people that you coach and work with?
Right. So I like to frame authority as the responsibility and power that comes to an individual who is named to a role. So you can exercise leadership from any position in a community or organization, but authority is a named position within a system or company or organization.
Got it. And as that applies, what does that look like in practice when people are being, dare I say, say women leaders specifically, when they are being authoritative in the best way, like how they can claim their authority? What does that look like? And what can women leaders do, or women in authority positions do, to be more effective?
Right. So women in authority like men in authority, need to accomplish the goal of the organization, the business objectives. Men and women have the same responsibility there. I think I don't like to talk too much about gender differences, but I think for women, we've been raised and acculturated to be so attuned to other people and to the relationships and to the needs of people that sometimes being so attuned to that makes it difficult to have the hard conversations, to take the steps. For example, if you have to lay off a lot of people, that's not easy for anyone. But women tend to have more of connection to the relationships. And just to make that relevant to today, there's research now that shows during the pandemic that the female managers, the women managers, were paying a lot more attention and investing a lot more of their own energy in caring for their employees, and now are experiencing greater burnout because of that. So when I'm working with a woman who is in a role of authority, I'm trying to help her balance three relationships: the relationship with herself, understanding what she wants in her career, what she wants to accomplish, her relationship with others, and that has multiple levels of the people you manage, the people who are your peers, and then the people who are above you who need to know you if you're ever going to be promoted. And then the relationship to the system, which very often women don't fully take account of. I think guys are raised to have more of an awareness of how a group functions, and all of the ways that they get socialized through a drink after work or golfing. They understand how the whole group works, not just the individual relationships. And sometimes women don't realize that a lot of that informal networking really plays an impact on people's careers.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. It's Anthony here again. I just wanted to let you know, if you're enjoying today's episode, I'd love it if you could give us a review and a comment to let us know where you're listening from. It means a lot to us. It helps us with the algorithm. It also helps us get into the hands of more people so that we can keep bringing great guests onto the show. So please do that. Also, if you or your team are planning a strategic planning offsite coming up, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to see if we're a fit to facilitate, to support you and your team getting on the same page and getting clear about where you want to go. So you can visit smestrategy.net or click the link in the description. We'd appreciate both of those things. And now get us back to the episode.
Yeah, because I think one of the things when you said, so I really love that. By the way, ladies, gentlemen, or none of those things, if you're listening to, I think there's a lot to listen here. So it's not just for women and it's not just for men, but the relationship to self, being aware of how that is, especially in times of crisis or challenging times. Relationship with others. If you are a leader, if you're a manager, you relate with others. And then relationship to the system. And I think that's critical. And what I put on as a sidebar is kind of playing the game. The guys play the game.
Very well put. That's exactly. And knowing how the game is played, that's the key.
And I wonder how the game, and we could talk about equity and equality and all that stuff, how the game isn't necessarily stacked default because of like physiologically, women have different needs that sometimes force them to prioritize. It's like, oh, I gotta, be with the kids, or I gotta be with my family, or choices. And so maybe a question to ask is, how can senior level women, or any women or anybody, be aware of playing the game without sort of sacrificing self, or sacrificing, kind of those ingrained needs that are there and they can't do anything about it? Is my question kind of clear, if you get what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I would just tweak it a little bit, and I would say, rather than saying needs, I would say responsibilities. That women often to date have been carrying more of the responsibility for children and parental care. I have one of the places I find hope is that I think the younger generations of men are really assuming more responsibility for childcare, but I'm not quite sure we're at parity yet. I think that when it comes to balancing those responsibilities with your role at work, I find that women can actually do that piece reasonably well. It can be challenging and hard, but my observation is they do it well. The system piece is that the systems of organizations have been created by decades of mostly white men who have built a culture that is comfortable and effective for them. And so when someone who is different, whether it's women or a person of color, comes in, there is a rub, and it's important to understand what makes the system click and work, because the system doesn't feel compelled to understand or incorporate you. And so all of the work that we see today on diversity and inclusion is trying to address the decades of assumption that one model was the model. And now we're trying to recognize that the research shows that businesses are much more effective as businesses. Their financial bottom line is higher if they have a diverse workforce and a diverse leadership team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to sort of take I have a question about, again, women leaders, but to pull back on you said, talking about the system. If you are a leader, male or female, and you're running your organization, you might not recognize that you are actually in a system. And most entrepreneurs, business people, they recognize they have a business model. If you take the business model canvas and all of the components to it, you think it's like, how do I make my widget? How do I sell my widget? How do I do payment processing faster? How do I save money here? But I don't think people think about how that people system is set up. We talk culture, which is loosely that,
Right.
but it's actually, hey, what are the blind spots? How have things been set up? And I think we talk about disruption that happened through COVID. Everybody had to work from home. Great. Well, that served some people and it underserved other people. So from a people perspective, look and say, hey, how are you supporting the people within your organization, but not because they're within an organization like it's four walls, but within your organization because your organization is a system of systems designed to make a widget.
Exactly. When I worked at a tech company, I was in charge of the orientation of senior executives when they were hired. And the first thing I would say is, you're going to find that you run into invisible walls. And they'd say, what do you mean? And I'd say, well, you're coming in from a larger type of company where you know how things function. And this company is only 12 years old, and it's like a 12-year-old boy. And so you're going to be going along, and all of a sudden something's going to you're going to hit something, and you won't know what happened. But it's that the culture or the system or the norms are still being created. And don't be surprised if you don't recognize them when you hit them.
I find that so fascinating, both calling a young company a 12-year-old boy, because sometimes they act irrationally, but also the expectations and norms of how things went before. I have a question that I'm saving about leaders leading high potential women. But before I do that, because you talked about relationship with self, relationship with others, relationship to the system. From a perspective of authority, how do you view internalizing either conflict with self or conflict with others as it relates to that leadership authority dynamic? And I say that because sometimes I find women leaders that I talk to sometimes internalize process a lot, and I don't know if it always gets communicated, and they hold on to a lot of stuff. So as you had mentioned, the relationship with self suffers, and I was wondering what you thought of internalization as a source of that.
Absolutely. I talk about the internal voices that we have internalized, that we're constantly judging ourselves. If a woman is given a performance review and everything is glowing, and at the end, the manager says, and if you want to continue to develop, you can do X, Y, and Z. And if you meet her 5 minutes later or a day or two later, and you ask her how it went, all she's going to remember is that you can work on X, Y, and Z. She will completely have lost all of the positive glowing comments because we have this internal critic that is at work. And so when I'm coaching a woman, I'm really listening for what that sounds like and trying to help her recognize it so that she can develop alternative mantras, such as I will have confidence in my competence. I can do this. I am successful, so that she begins to internalize it. The second piece of the internal relationship is that far too often women don't take the time to know what it is they want on their career. They're busy with doing and performing and being good to their managers and their family and everything else. But if you ask them, where do you want to be in 3 years or 5 years? More often than not, I've found over the years, they don't know. Whereas their male colleagues, if you ask, when I started asking colleagues of my clients, they would always say, oh, I want my boss's job in 3 years. It's really clear. I'm ready to take that over. So I think I try to encourage women to really spend the time knowing what they want and then finding ways to ask for it, to really insist upon having a career conversation at least once a year. They show that women are 5 times more likely to not have a career conversation than their male colleagues.
Interesting. I, as you say that, so by the way, if this applies to you, take it. If it doesn't apply to you, don't take it. But it's,
Right,
we
right.
can get experts on here. But I find that generally men are more brazen. And again, going back to the responsibilities that are ingrained, I think men have a much easier time with risk. As in, I can sort of do whatever I want with my body and life, like it or not. And that
That's
the
right.
risk to it is very low. Whereas in a woman, the partner they decide to choose and who they work with in the future and all of those, that it's much more complicated. So it's a intricacy. So anything else you want to say about that?
No,
thought that was great.
I think you nailed it on that, that guys don't have the same fear or hesitancy to apply for a job or ask for a promotion. And women are, think I have to have X, Y, Z, I have to have all 10 things on a job posting. And if I only have 9 and sort of the 10th, I may not apply, which, is just unfortunate.
Yeah. And it's an interesting piece. So I want to shift the thought so that if you are a senior leader and there's a lot of call it like mid-level or emerging female talent that they're just great. They're really good. Like if I have all women on my team, I would, because they're just excellent. And so I think that there are, as you talked about the demographic sociological trends, people a better understanding. How you lead and mentor a man or male will be different than how you lead and mentor a female. And so what is advice that you would give to senior managers, male or otherwise, or female or otherwise, to support their mid-level employees in that journey to really help them use your authority to help them expand their authority? I'm going to try to use the word.
I love that question. I would say that supporting and promoting a woman is not all that different than doing it for a man. So I would say, first of all, ask yourself what you do when you do it well. Second of all, I would say with a woman, find the time to understand what she wants. Pose the question. And if she doesn't have an answer, say, come back to me with an answer. So push. I think I think in this kind of post fear of harassment environment, sometimes managers are afraid to ask women a question or afraid to push them. But I would say, help her to have a career plan. Help her. Third is tell her what you see in her as potential. You know, everyone knows that women are fabulous performers, but there's a bias against seeing potential in them. And so senior men tend to see the potential in guys that look like they were when they were younger. But look at the women and tell her. I can't tell you how many women tell a story of a manager in their career who told her the potential they saw in her, and it had transformative impact. So tell her what you see. Include her in meetings that will give her exposure to what the kind of culture system we're talking about. Introduce her to people. And what was the third? And be on the outlook for stretch assignments. Stretch assignments are those that pull someone out of their comfort zone and give them a chance to really stretch in a different area or a different set of skills, or to do something that's pretty risky. But it's what demonstrates even more potential. And women don't raise their hands for risk assignments, which I push them to do, but they're often not asked to do the stretch assignment. And so that's a huge thing that you can do to really move someone along.
Absolutely. And so the long and short of that is it's not that much different from leading men, but I think you have to be really intentional about what it is. Being a leader, if nobody is following you, is one. Also, leaders help other people get to where they want to go. So you have to do that for everybody in your business and company are going to be better for it. I'm going to take an opportunity to shout out an organization called Athena, which you may know. They're out of San Diego.
Yes.
So San Diego, I got placed there in a placement earlier this year to help them with a data visualization tool. And their mission is to advance 1 million women in STEM. Yeah. And we talked about what does advance mean? It's like, oh, are they getting on boards? Are they taking on special projects? Because advance is conceptual. How do we make it specific? But I really love what they were doing is putting, and I think I put like mentorship for women leaders, like send the elevator back down and make it more commonplace to support those people. But whether you're man, woman, or non-gendered, you can definitely help all of those people. It's about balance, and it's about building your business, making more money. If you support everybody, if you support everybody, your entire business is going to be good, not just a small portion of it. Thoughts on mentorship and
so just to build on what you were saying, I think the important thing when you were saying be intentional about it, what I would add is that because women often don't ask for help or ask for mentoring or ask for the stretch assignment, it doesn't mean they don't want it. So be intentional about raising the question, putting the burden on them. I'm not asking any manager to, go overboard. I'm just asking to be intentional about having the conversation, telling them what you see and paying attention. I think high-performing women get taken for granted. I've seen situations where a boss doesn't want to get her promoted because they don't want to lose their best performer. But, we need to be willing to pay attention, see the potential, and push.
Yeah. And it's, and when you say that, like my internal brain says, well, in some cases, like, yeah, I did that. I did the thing one time. I did ask one time and something happened, but you really have to like nurture. You can't water a plant one time. It's like, hey, always continue pushing. And I think that's what great managers do, great leaders do. They put people out of their comfort zone. And so I think what I'm taking away from this is there's a natural discomfort. Like great, potentially great. Nobody get mad at me here. I'm just trying to get the thing. I think there's a greater discomfort naturally from those stretch assignments, from asking what you want. So as a leader, you need to build the system to support everybody in flourishing. And then I'll give a plug for strategic planning. I mean, we do strategic planning all the time because that's our job. we help leadership teams get clear on where they want to go, because sometimes they don't even know where the future of the company is. But I think it's a great tool to use that. Here's where the company is going. Talk to individual people, say, hey, how do you see yourself fitting in there? Make it clear so they can say, I see myself here. Oh, okay, well, I see you over here. So how do we, reconcile the two? So it's a soft introduction to the conversation, instead of just saying, so Janet, where do you see yourself in 5 years? It's like, I don't know, a million places.
Right.
Context and framework. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's right. It's about having the conversation and understanding where they can contribute and keeping that fresh, because I think younger generations really want to be doing new things and learning new skills all the time. And I also think that it's about finding ways to tap into their understanding of what's good for the business. That, sometimes if you can ask really different people with different perspectives about what the strategy should or could be, you might get some really valuable input.
I mean, that's why we love what we do. You get an opportunity to get everybody's perspective. And I like doing the virtual meetings because everybody has the same size Zoom square. Some people can be big personalities and take up a lot of space, myself included, but having the space for everybody to be equal, you get some really good results. Thoughts?
Yeah, I would say to managers running Zoom calls, it's very challenging to make sure everyone gets heard. And, even gimmicky ways of, going around the squares and giving everyone a chance to speak. But I think the same ways that women have often been silenced or overlooked, or their comments have been absorbed by someone else in conference rooms, happens on Zoom as well. So I think it's about really inviting, really, as the manager, you really need to manage the conversation and not just let the extroverts dominate, and make sure you hear from everyone.
Yeah, there's a cool tool in the Otter AI, which we've used sometimes to record meeting. It'll tell you how much percentage of time each speaker spoke. And so if you
that's
ever
fabulous.
Yeah, so if you want a shot to the face to say, oh, okay, these 3 people talked 70% of the time and everybody else didn't, then you can't avoid it. So I like tools like that to highlight that. But Ellen, where can people connect with you? Where can they get your book? Where can they learn more about what you do and just connect with you?
Sure. So the quickest way to connect with me is through my website, which is just www.ellensnee.com. That's SNEE. On there, you can find out how to buy the book, how to engage me as an executive coach or as a speaker. We have all kinds of talks and activities we post. We're trying to really become content rich over time. And I'm also on social media. So I welcome people reaching out to connect. There's nothing I enjoy more. So don't be shy.
Awesome. Thank you, Ellen. And for our listeners, I think whether you are a woman in authority or whether you are a male in authority or whether you're exploring ways to lead better, I think that there's lots to learn, because if not for you, the people on your team, because everybody has to learn differently. So I invite you to shift your perspective on how you think of everybody on your team and the system that is built around to help them be supported, and pick up Ellen's book when you get a chance. So Ellen, thank you so much for joining me. It has been a blast of a conversation, and I appreciate your perspective today.
Thank you so much. It's been a delight to have the conversation.
Excellent, me too. So my guest today is Ellen Snee, who is the author of Lead: How Women in Charge Claim Their Authority. She is a speaker and executive coach to senior level women. So if you have someone in your life that is an executive level woman, be sure to send them this podcast, connect them with Ellen, get the book. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. My name is Anthony Taylor. You can connect with me online. Be sure to like, subscribe, do all the things on social media. And I look forward to sharing with you in our next episode. Until next time.